First and foremost, I thank the chair, Professor Raghunath Goshi, and my senior and my beloved brother, Professor Balaganapati Devarakondaji, and the most important person of this ACPR, Advocate Maruti Jaraleji, and professors like we always adore Professor Paneer Selvamji, Professor Sambasiva Prasad Garu, Srikala Nair ma'am, and many more. My colleagues also there, Dr. Maharana, Dr. Ramesh, and many more sadhakas, learned persons, and my dear students. Very good afternoon to one and all. The title that already given by the introducer, that is a critical and philosophical reflection of rational mysticism in the writings of Sri Gurudev Dr. Ranade. Before going to start my paper, I have to say something that how I come across ACPR and my journey. Actually, I am from Department of Philosophy, Allahabad University, where Gurudev have joined as a professor, become dean, then vice chancellor. So, since I am from also South India, Andhra Pradesh, when I joined in Allahabad University way back in 2010, my senior, my brother, Professor Devarakonda, introduced me to this ACPR. Then I became a part of this ACPR family as an academic council member. Then I am also a part of the Journal of Pathway to God. Then for the last 6-7 years I have been associated with this ACPR. So because before joining in the University of Allahabad, I was not at all aware of Professor Dr. Ranade ji. But after joining there, as rightly pointed out by Professor Paneer Selvam sir in the morning, as well as Balaganapati, and also the book by Professor Nalini Bhushan and Garfield has rightly pointed out three important teachers of the Allahabad University as Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. And to start with, that same tradition is Professor Dr. Ranade ji and Professor A.C. Mukherjee, who has written wonderful book that is on the self, the notion of self. And the third one, Professor R.N. Kaul. So these three professors rightly called as the great university, Allahabad University, which is also known as Oxford of East, and the fourth oldest university in India, as Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Then, when I started my career at Allahabad University, I am from Buddhism specialization. I did my PhD on Buddhist epistemology, and I also teach classical Indian schools. Then one professor retired, and he used to teach contemporary Indian thought. Then that paper was given to me. And there are 5 chapters in that. One chapter dedicated to 3 important thinkers. One is Professor Dr. Ranade, where we have introduced the important book, The Constructive Survey of Upanishadic Philosophy. And the second important thinker, that is A.C. Mukherjee. Without that book, we cannot understand or write anything on the notion of self. And the third important personality is Professor Sangamlal Pandey, who has introduced the concept of depth epistemology. It's a new concept that he has introduced. So then, in order to what I can teach to the students, I started reading Professor Dr. Ranade ji. Then there are certain important things, because my paper is on rational mysticism. Anyway, I will talk about that. But already some of the things that are discussed by Paneer Selvam sir as well as Balaganapati and also. But I thought that since there are many students and they are very keenly observing and listening properly, which is really, I appreciate all the students here, that many of you might be knowing how Gurudev has started his career, then landed at Allahabad University. But certain things has to be mentioned here, how he became a mysticist. And from there, he has started with rational mysticism and the constituents of rational mysticism. How a layman point of view, because once you understand mysticism, as a what I call sadhaka or understanding the teachings of Gurudev, one can understand. But to a layman, how can we justify by using reason, one of the important element as a rationalist, justification to the mysticism is really well described in the works of R.D. Ranade. So with that injunction, I have written my paper. If you find any what I call lacuna or any kind of misinformation or miscommunication, that forgive me and tell me, because I am not a scholar of this Ranade, but I am reading now, try to understand his teachings. So to start with, quotation given by R.D. Ranade ji, mysticism is not opposed to reason. It is the fulfillment of reason in direct spiritual experience. To start with, Gurudev was one of the gifted sons of India who has achieved great distinction in several areas, namely education, constructivism, intellectual as spiritual also. Karnataka was the home of his physical and spiritual birth. Maharashtra and UP, Uttar Pradesh, provided the setting for his career as a professor and as an educationalist. The world known him through his monumental work, namely a constructive survey of Upanishadic philosophy. Gurudev was a great saint. Once he remarked that saints are the lighthouses on the pathway to God. This is because our worldly existence is a terrible ocean. The darkness of the ignorance envelops the human being. In this situation, it is the saints who show the proper path to the barge of our life. They offer us the light of knowledge. Saints also great powerhouses of spiritual energy. Just as powerhouses generate electricity, the heart of saints generates divine electricity. There it is that the light of Sat Chit Ananda, God in the form of existence, knowledge, power and bliss, shines with the luster of a million suns. God manifests himself in the hearts of saints. Gurudev's concept of rational mysticism developed from his attempt to harmonize philosophical thought with personal spiritual experience. Writing at a time when Indian philosophy was interacting with modern scientific and rational perspectives, he maintained that mysticism is neither irrational nor merely emotional. Instead, it is a disciplined and experiential realization of the divine that can be understood through reason. Drawing inspiration from the Upanishads, the Bhakti tradition and his own mystical insights, he proposed a systematic path to spiritually centered on self-realization, moral refinement and inner growth. Through his writings, Gurudev aimed to present Indian mysticism in a clear, rational and a scholarly manner, making it meaningful for both academic thinkers and spiritual aspirants. Now, what is the spiritual growth of Gurudev? How it has started? What holds true for a physical seed is just as true for a spiritual seed as well. The needs of both are similar. Like its physical counterpart, a spiritual seed too needs fertile soil to grow and flourish abundantly. The seeker's mind must be well prepared and refined, enriched by noble heredity as well as by faith, devotion and discernment. Through introspection, the seeker must identify the weeds of negative tendencies and remove them by practicing self-control. This prepares the ground for the seed to sprout properly and produce the first shoots of experience. Ultimately, it is only the gentle spring of the Sadguru's grace that allows this plant to blossom into beautiful, pregnant flowers and yield sweet, nourishing fruits of higher spiritual experience. Blessing the seeker with divine bliss. Gurudev embodied all these essential qualities. He was born into a family blessed with sincere devotees, and his mother, in particular, was devotion personified. In this sense, he was born of devotion, sustained by it, and raised in an environment permeated with devotion. Consequently, his heart was naturally prepared to receive this spiritual seed and to provide it with the nourishment and momentum needed for its swift and powerful growth. Then his academic career, Gurudev began looking for a means for a livelihood. He was very clear about his attitude towards his profession. He earnestly wished not to take up any occupation that would inflate his ego, weaken his devotion, or obstruct his spiritual pursuits. Even if a profession promised immense wealth, he was unwilling to accept it at the cost of his inner life. He felt that most occupations inevitably involve attachment to money, association with other men's, women, and a tendency toward atheism. For these reasons, he believed that such professions were unsuitable for him and should be avoided. In this state of mental turmoil, Gurudev began his search for employment and soon became weary from the prolonged effort. Eventually, he secured a position as a lecturer in English composition at Ferguson College, Pune, with a monthly salary of just 40 rupees. Subsequently, he received an offer from Gadag for the post of headmaster as a high school, which carried a higher salary of 100 rupees per month. However, Gurudev found himself unable to decide whether he should accept this offer or not. Troubled by indecision, he sought the guidance of his spiritual master. During this period of uncertainty, Gurudev was unable to pursue his sadhana effectively, and his mind remained restless. His master advised him to dedicate himself wholeheartedly to constant sadhana, assuring him that the issue of employment would resolve itself in due course of time. He further counseled and Gurudev to cultivate courage, seriousness, and nobility in his conduct. Understanding the deeper meaning of his guidance, Gurudev abandoned the plan of going to Gadag and chose to remain in Pune. Subsequently, Gurudev secured another position as the curator of the manuscript library. This post proved far more conducive to the advancement of his spiritual sadhana. It provided him ample scope for both intellectual growth as well as spiritual. Just 3 minutes. Why I am telling this? Because the reason to come to Allahabad University, there are two important things that had happened in his life, that during the period he accomplished two important tasks. First, the establishment of the ACPR, and the second one is the publication of a constructive survey of Upanishadic philosophy. And this, Professor Ganganath Jha, who is a great Sanskrit scholar, the Vice Chancellor of Allahabad University at that particular time, Professor Jha was keen to appoint Gurudev as the head of the Department of Philosophy at his university. The following extract that he has written to Gurudev, that anyway, you can give us a trial for a year. After that, if you don't find the conditions suitable, you can tell me so, and I shall see that the final step towards confirmation is not taken and you are relieved. Again, he has written in 1/10/1927, I need not add that personally I shall regard it as my greatest achievements as a Vice Chancellor if I succeed in bringing to the university as a professor of your caliber and attainments. So please don't disappoint. This is the letter written to Gurudev. Finally, Pandit Jha wrote the third letter to bring Gurudev to Allahabad, that it doesn't matter even if you don't deliver a single lecture. I want to enter your name in the list of professors of Allahabad University. It was impossible to reject such a loving, pressing invitation. Then there was no alternative but to accept it. Hence, Gurudev accepted to his request and joined Allahabad University as the head of the Department of Philosophy in 1927. So how this inner urge for spiritual growth that really led him to Allahabad University, where I am also working in the department. And whenever we start any academic program, first we pay floral tribute to Gurudev chair, still it is existed in our department. Then we start our academic events in our university. At the same time, the second chair also we have in Allahabad University, and the present Vice Chancellor has taken that chair and properly kept in Vijayanagaram Hall. So that is the respect even till today. The present Vice Chancellor, Professor Sangeeta Srivastava, is offering. Even till today, we get devotees from Karnataka and Maharashtra. Still people visit and they pay their tributes. That is the greatness of Gurudev that we are directly experiencing and witnessing. So that is the great journey that has led from, even morning also, Professor, somebody is telling that he has left Deccan. The similarities between Ranade and Lokmanya Tilak, that even after leaving that place, that he has created a great what you call legacy that in Allahabad University. Now coming to, I don't know, only 3 more minutes, even I have not come to my main important presentation, but still some of the things, I think 5 minutes at least. The most important point that without that we cannot understand the Guruji, that is mysticism, because he is known for it, and particularly rational mysticism, that I would like to address in this lecture, that the main important points I will highlight. I directly come to the rational mysticism before going to mysticism. According to Gurudev, rational mysticism is a philosophical and spiritual perspective that brings together logical reasoning and direct mystical experience. He maintained that genuine mysticism is neither irrational nor merely emotional or occult science. Instead, it is an organized and experiential realization of God that can be thoughtfully interpreted, critically examined, and meaningfully explained through the use of reason. One can make out from Gurudev's writing that he was not merely an armchair philosopher, but verily a life-lived practitioner. In the preface of this book, Constructive Survey of Upanishadic Philosophy, he writes, it would be a problem for the philosophy of the immediate future to place mysticism on a truly philosophical basis. Thus the term rational mysticism was brought into the stream of contemporary thought by him, which is not a contradiction in terms but a truism, which was rightly pointed out by Panir Salam sir in the morning. Then the constituents, very briefly I'll discuss and I'll close it. The most important thing is when it comes to this particular aspect, the Marathi scholar fittingly described him when he is discussing rational mysticism as Gurudev as Panini of spiritual life. That's what he has given a quotation with regard to Gurudev, with regard to rational mysticism. And the another important point that is very important in order to understand rational mysticism is, it is often described as beatificism, a philosophy that places supreme value on the bliss or ecstasy that arises from the direct vision of the self or God. This bliss of self-realization stands far more above ordinary happiness, just as happiness rises above mere pleasure. The central doctrine of beatificism is expressed in the statement, bliss is Brahman, quote unquote. According to Gurudev, spiritual progress unfolds 3 stages, namely, first, direct communion with the saint. Secondly, realizing the unity of the saint with Brahman, which leads to profound bliss. And finally, recognizing that the very state of bliss itself is identical with Brahman. Here is, I see very close affinity with even the notion of Christian concept of mysticism, which is a triune of Father, the Son and the Holy Spirit. Even I can see here in Ranade's Gurudev's works also that he tried to explain that triune unity of the infinite, the individual self and the Atman. And the second most important thing that we need to understand when you are understanding rational mysticism is realization of the self and its ethical aspect, which plays a significant role. Because Gurudev holds that the doctrine of self-realization is the point where metaphysics, morality and mysticism comes together, because we also always discuss that philosophy and religion and morality, these goes always together, unlike Western concept of ethics. So that is where we also see a parallel discussion of metaphysics, morality and mysticism, he says, always go together. Because it is the summum bonum, the ultimate aim of human ethical and spiritual striving. Not going into further, and I also explained the mystical aspect of self-realization, and ultimately coming to the conclusion that I came to the conclusion that Gurudev presents a carefully structured set of criteria for determining the authenticity of mystical experiences. A true mystical experience is intuitive, already sir also mentioned, anta prajna, and supersensuous, arising from within and initiated at the center of one's being. It should display continuity and progressive growth. Drawing inspiration from Saint Gnaneshwara, Gurudev also explains this through the idea of asemptic realization. And genuine mystical experience brings about a state of bliss or beatification. There must be a harmony between one's inner and outer perception of the divine. It should result in greater intellectual clarity and deeper understanding. It must contribute to tangible moral improvement in both the individual and society. Finally, authentic mystical experience possesses a universal character. As mysticists across cultures, nations, ages, and genders consistently affirm similar truths regarding the divine name, the power of devotion, and the realization of the self. With this, I conclude and I say that Gurudev, the way he has presented in a unique manner to understand rational mysticism, that's what he is one of the important person, as rightly pointed out by Parir Salam sir. Many people, even the works of Ranade, that unless and until if you are not incorporating in the curricula, then it is very difficult, because most of the people, because Allahabad University we have introduced, because that is also one of the important thing where we can take the works of Gurudev to the future generation. With this, thank you one and all.